The sun baked the ironwood wastes until every thorn, every pebble, every grain of dust glowed white-hot, but Clara Whitlock glowed hotter. Rope chewed her wrists raw against the dead ironwood's crooked branch. Sweat stung the split on her cheek. Flies treated her like supper. Somewhere overhead a vulture tipped its wings, studying whether she would stop cursing long enough to die. She spat grit at it. "Find an easier meal, buzzard. I'm busy ruining a few men's afterlives." A dry wind whistled through splintered stone spires, carrying gunpowder ghosts and the faint clang of distant spurs. She tasted copper on the breeze and remembered the moment her husband fell, a greed fat bullet between his shoulders, Spanish map fluttering from his grasp, partners turned executioners shouting promises to silence the widow. They dragged her past cactus bones and bandit cairns, tied her up like bait, then rode off laughing about how fast coyotes stripped flesh. Their horses sounded like distant drums now, unless those hooves were new. She listened, eyes narrowed against haze. Hooves, yes, but slower, careful. One rider. Not drunk on victory. The vulture croaked and hopped sideways as the silhouette crested the ridge, a lone Navajo mounted on a paint Mustang, broad hat shadowing a face carved from red sandstone. He halted, eyes tracking the circling bird, then her ragged dress, then the noose of rawhide around her ankles. No hurry in him, death had given him patience. Clara summoned every ounce of dignity left in her sun-scorched bones. "You there? Feel like cutting a lady loose, or are you here to watch the show?" He dismounted with a fluid slide, boots crunching dead bracken. Copper bracelets winked on his wrists. A bone-handled knife hugged his belt beside a battered Henry rifle. He said nothing, only studied the knot, the thorny bark, the tracks crusted beneath her dangling toes. The silence stretched until she fought the urge to scream. "I'm Clara Whitlock," she snapped. "Widow of Samuel Whitlock, may he roast. Those scum stole my property and left me to feed the dirt. Free me and I'll pay you more silver than you've dreamt of." "Name's Taza Redhawk," he said at last, voice gravel rubbed smooth by canyon echo. "I don't dream of silver. How much gold?" Her laugh cracked like a gunshot. "Half a Spanish trove. Enough to drown you in coins." "Greed drowns," he murmured, yet produced the knife. One swipe, rope frayed and parted. She crashed to her knees, sucked a breath that tasted of blood and victory, then forced herself upright before he offered help. "Appreciate the rescue, stranger," she said, dusting off splinters. "But half a treasure is the fee. I'm not haggling lower. I was thinking 40%. He replied, already studying hoof marks. "Map's missing. You can't find gold without it. Your price just fell." Her retort died when she saw the prints he knelt beside, fresh, deep, veering toward Bootlegger's Haven, an outlaw waypoint. Rage steeled her spine. "Those tracks belong to Renner's gang. They murdered my husband. They have the map." He met her glare, unreadable. "I hunt a man called Renner. Blood debt to settle for my clan. Seems our roads cross." He straightened, sheathing the knife. 40 is fair. 45 and a bullet for Renner. Deal." Wind carried a distant shout. Both heads snapped toward a rust-colored ravine where riders clustered around a smashed water barrel. One outlaw kicked the wood, discovered Clara's discarded ropes, and bellowed. Rifles lifted like stingers. Taza stepped into her shadow. "Run or fight?" "Fight, obviously." Her smile stretched feral. "I've got 6 chambers of updated etiquette." He handed her a Colt Navy he'd taken off a different corpse, thumbed back his Henry's hammer, and motioned toward a jagged outcrop. They sprinted, vaulting sage and spinebush, dropping behind fractured limestone as the first shot cracked air. Stone chips sang past her ear while Taza leveled the Henry, sighted calmly, and punished the lead rider's shoulder. Horse and man toppled in a wave of sand. Clara popped up beside him. "Cover!" She fired twice. The second round kissed a bandit's hat clean off, revealing a bald scalp already blistered. Screams bounced among pillars. Dust clouds bloomed. Taza's Mustang whinnied eager. 2 more shots from his rifle punched daylight through a renegade's chest. Clara ducked to reload, marveling how her heartbeat steadied once bullets flew. Terror was yesterday. Vengeance belonged to now. The outlaws regrouped behind a wagon skeleton, peppering their rocky shield. Taza flicked a look skyward. Storm rollin' dot. She frowned. Sky was cloudless. Then thunder boomed, a dynamite blast from the gang's wagon. Shockwave rattled teeth, but also dropped their makeshift barricade, scattering men. Taza used the opening, vaulting over cover into open sand. She cursed, followed, firing to keep heads down. They moved like paired wolves, weaving through debris until the surviving bandits broke lines and galloped for distant mesquite. When silence settled, Clara realized she was grinning wider than she had in years. Taza wiped soot from his cheek, none of it joy. He knelt beside a dying rider. Where's Renner? The outlaw coughed foam, eyes rolling. Already. Haven, map, big reward. He wheezed final breath. Taza closed the lids, stood. Bootleggers Haven, 2 days hard ride if they squeeze the horses. Then we squeeze harder, Clara said, rubbing wrists. There's a supply shack 5 miles north. Food, ammo, a few nags Renner's boys rarely guard. He nodded once, partnership sealed without ceremony. They stripped cartridges, canteens, a half-map fragment scorched but legible enough to mark a red X near Ironwood's heart. Clara tucked it in her bodice, smirked at Taza's raised brow. Closest thing to a bank vault out here. They mounted, she on a stolen roan mare, he back on the paint. Dusk bruised the horizon as they trotted toward the waste's interior. Behind them, dust devils erased footprints, vultures spiraled lower, and the canyon swallowed gun smoke like a secret. Night bled over the desert. Stars ignited crisp and white. They didn't stop, revenge rides in boots that never rest. Each hoofbeat pounded Renner's name into the ground. Taza rode silent, thoughts locked behind obsidian eyes. Clara matched his rhythm, muscles aching but heart sparking. Somewhere ahead lay stolen gold, a murderer with her map, and the blood debt shadowing a Navajo warrior. Lightning flickered, heat, not storm, sketching the ironwood spires into jagged fangs. She tasted iron on the wind and whispered, "We're coming, boys. Keep the grave warm." Taza heard, almost smiled, and nudged the Mustang faster. The vulture that had circled her fluttered away, cheated for now. Yet the night carried its own hunger, and the ironwood wastes never missed a second chance to feast. Dawn clawed the horizon blood-red when Clara jerked her mare to a halt at the rim of Coyote Draw. Below, the supply shack sagged between 2 charred mesquite trunks like some drunkard's coffin, but its roof lay strangely smooth, freshly patched with canvas stolen from a stagecoach. Taza lifted a hand for silence. Gun smoke drifted, faint yet fresh. Somebody was already shopping. Clara's jaw tightened. Renner's hounds? Wrong tracks, Taza murmured, studying hoofprints cut deep and staggered. Sheriff's irons. Hodge rode hard through the night, burned horses to beat us. A tinny laugh echoed up from the draw, followed by the scrape of metal on wood. Clara slid from her saddle, cocked her navy, and started downhill, brush tearing at her skirts. Taza caught her elbow. Hodge hangs men before breakfast. We ghostin', not charge. She yanked free. The law butchered my husband as casually as the outlaws. Ghosts don't get justice, bullets do. He stepped in her path, brown eyes steady as canyon walls. One shot alerts Renner, map vanishes forever. We skin the sheriff quiet. He tapped the bone knife's hilt, and moved off without waiting for consent. Clara muttered a blistered prayer and followed, boots slipping on shale. At the draw's floor, heat already shimmered. They crept along a dry wash choked with catclaw until the shack loomed overhead. Voices drifted through busted planks. Lady's worth more than any Spanish coin. Governor's dangling amnesty if we drag her in alive. Alive's optional. Another voice snorted. Badge still buys the ranch if she's quiet in a coffin. Clara's fingernails gouged her palm. Taza pressed 2 fingers to his lips. Wait. Inside, boot heels thudded, gear clattered. He pointed to a smoke hole near the roofline, then to Clara's revolver. She understood, lifted her dress hem to reveal a garter-holstered derringer. One heartbeat, two, and they flowed apart, him to the back door, her beneath the smoke hole stacked on an old barrel. Splintered boards bit her shoulders while she strained to see. Sheriff Hodge, big as a prize bull and twice as arrogant, shoved tins into a saddlebag. Two deputies lounged near a keg, passing whiskey. Taza eased the rear door a finger width, slipped inside like dusk. Clara steadied the tiny pistol, breath a thin wire. Hodge's voice boomed. Renner thinks he's king, but kings pay taxes. I aim to collect. He spun. Taza's knife flashed. The deputy on the left gurgled and folded. The other froze, whiskey sloshed. Clara fired. The bullet kissed the liquor jug, exploding fumes across lantern flame. Blue fire whooshed ceiling high. Deputies shrieked. Taza yanked Clara through the smoke hole as flames chased them. They belly rolled into dust while the shack roared behind. A burning beam crashed. Hodge burst out, coat aflame, badge glowing molten. He ripped it free, hurled it aside, and drew a revolver bigger than his ego. Taza snapped his Henry to shoulder, but Clara shoved the barrel down. Let me. She stood, face smeared with soot, stepped into Hodge's aim. His eyes widened at the apparition rising from smoke he'd hoped would kill her. Mrs. Whitlock, he rasped, voice bubbling tar. Ain't you a stubborn weed? Correction, Thorn. She thumbed back the hammer. And you just grabbed the wrong end. Hodge fired first, shot wild in pain. The round ricocheted off a boulder. Clara's bullet drilled his gun hand, spinning iron into sand. Before he could scream, Taza's rifle but crushed his jaw. The sheriff collapsed, coughing sparks. Taza knelt, ripped a patch from Hodge's smoldering coat, and wrapped it around the man's wrist to stanch the blood. You'll live to answer sins, he said, binding tight. Where's Renner? Hodge spat teeth and smoke. West Trail, took the map. He's mining dynamite at Skull Gate, wiping tracks. He wheezed, head lolled. Taza dragged him to a half-buried iron ring, a forgotten anchor for stagecoach horses. He shackled Hodge's good wrist with his own cuff chain, latched it through the ring. Son'll judge you till marshals ride, he said, dropping the key down a scorpion hole. Clara stared, surprised by the restraint. Mercy? Justice, Taza answered, wiping sweat. A corpse can't confess in court. They scavenged quick, fresh canteens, 2 sticks of dynamite, a tin of coffee, ammunition, and, miracle, Hodge's saddlebags. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, flickered parchment edges, Renner's half-map. Clara unrolled it beside hers. Tears pricked as the 2 fragments aligned into a crooked skull shape marking a box canyon deep in Ironwood's heart. Taza traced the symbol. Skull Gate. Old Spanish mines honeycomb those cliffs. Enough holes to hide an army. Or blow one to hell, Clara muttered. Renner's planting powder to bury treasure, and witnesses. They mounted stolen horses and pounded west. Morning stretched, blistered, died beneath a noon of hammering light. Buzzards shadowed their trail. Distant thunderheads built towers over Black Mesa but never crossed the wastes. They rode through petrified streambeds where bleached bones whispered warnings. Speed stripped words from their tongues until only hoofbeats spoke. Near sundown they topped a butte and saw Skull Gate for the first time. 2 basalt pillars rose like colossal tusks, gate of a beast frozen mid-roar. Miners' shacks clung to cliffside switchbacks, campfires winked, powder kegs lined ledges like malignant fruit. Clara's breath hitched, not fear, anticipation. Gold and vengeance waited inside that stone maw. Taza surveyed silhouettes scuttling below, Renner's men rigging fuses, piling crates. He counted rifles, spotted machine gun nests, marked patrol cadence. Finally he turned to her, voice a sand-soft promise. Night shields bold hearts. We cut wires, steal fuse caps, turn their thunder against them. Clara holstered her navy. And if bold hearts sputter? He touched the dynamite bundle strapped behind his saddle. Then thunder speaks anyway. The last sun's sliver bled out, painting the gate's pillars crimson. Shadows deepened, ready to hide hunters and doom the hunted. Clara flexed burned wrists, tasted salt on her lips, and smiled at the abyss yawning below. Renner wanted ghosts, she whispered. Let's haunt him. Moonlight shattered against basalt like glass on steel as Clara and Taza slipped from shadow to shadow along Skull Gate's first switchback. Below them, Renner's camp sprawled, torches guttered, powder kegs stacked like crooked teeth, and men in tarnished breastplates swaggered between half-collapsed adits, boasting in bad Spanish about the fortune they'd soon drown in whiskey. Every boom of distant thunder from Black Mesa made the gunpowder sweat. Clara pressed her palm against the rock wall. The stone trembled. Someone inside the mine was already testing fuses. She mouthed a curse, then hooked her fingers around the rusty chain of a cargo winch anchored to the cliff. Taza was already above, climbing hand over hand, braids swaying like dark pendulums. She followed, boots scraping iron links until boots found ledge. Below, a sentry paused mid-drag on his cheroot, squinting toward the noise. Taza dropped silently, knuckles cracking the man's throat. The guard folded, ember dying in dust. They crouched behind a ridge of ore tailings. Clara's gaze locked on the largest powder cache. 2 wagons loaded axle-high, fuses coiled like scorpion tails. Renner expected to seal this canyon in fire once he carted the gold up the west trail. She leaned toward Taza, whisper thin. Cut those fuses, the caves stay open. Light them, the whole ridge caves on his head. Your call. His eyes reflected torchlight unreadable. Justice wears many shapes. He produced bone knife and a coil of corroded blasting wire he'd stolen earlier. We leave a surprise. When Renner rides out, thunder follows. Clara grinned, tasting gunpowder on the air. Together they slid to the wagon's shadow. She handled the fuses while he spliced in his stolen wire, rigging a dead man pull that would spark only when the wheels rolled. Sweat beaded under her collar despite the night chill. Somewhere deeper in the cavern, a choir of picks rang, men singing off-key about the Queen's gold. She tied the last knot, patted the keg. Happy retirement, boys! Footsteps echoed. Taza pushed her behind the wagon's tongue just as another sentry, a scrawny youth in conquistador helmet too large for his head, wandered past, whistling. Clara's pistol hovered a breath from his ribs, but Taza shook his head, no noise. Instead, he tugged the boy's belt as he passed. Helmet clanged off rock, the kid yelped, stumbled, and cracked skull first on the tailings. Out cold, quiet. Clara stared, impressed. Remind me to stay on your good side. They worked their way toward the main shaft, passing crates of antiquated muskets stamped with a Spanish crest, proof Renner loved spectacle almost as much as money. Inside the tunnel mouth, lanterns painted walls the color of candle fat. Carved saints watched from niches, faces half melted by centuries. Clara felt their hollow eyes track her steps. She muttered apology to them all. A whistle blast snapped down the passage. Renner's voice rolled after, lazy and cruel. Load the last mule team, boys. We ride at dawn, cave this tomb behind us, and drown Mexico in tequila. Cheers erupted, metal clanged. Taza's jaw tightened. He pointed to a side passage choked with rubble. They squeezed through, boots sliding on shale until the mine opened into a natural vault glimmering with quartz ribbons. Gold ingots lay stacked under canvas, but Clara's gaze fixed on the wall behind. Renner had painted a crude skull in tar and set candles in its eyes, black ritual bravado. She tasted bile. Taza knelt, traced boot prints in dust. Renner's alone back here sometimes, counting. He tapped the quartz wall, hollow beyond. Secret exit. We wait inside. When he checks his hoard, we finish this. Clara ran a fingertip across an ingot, felt her reflection ripple in dull metal. 90 pounds each, wealth enough for widows and tribes alike, yet they both knew the price. She forced her hand away. Justice first. Gold later. Minutes stretched like years. Sweat cooled to ice. Then Renner strode in, lantern swinging. He wore conquistador armor polished mirror bright, an absurd crown of brass. Clara's pulse hammered. He set the lamp, flipped canvas, caressed the ingots. Sweet saints, you'll sing for me. His back turned. Taza rose, silent as fog, knife glinting. A pebble skittered, Renner spun, Colts clear before breath. Thought you'd haunt me, Whitlock? He laughed when he saw her, eyes wolf wild. I left you for buzzard bait. I ate the buzzard, she said, and the Colt Navy boomed. Renner's crown flew dented. He staggered. Taza lunged, steel flashing for the artery. Renner's pistol barked. Taza twisted aside, blades slicing breastplate laces, metal screeching. Gunfire roared inside the vault, deafening. Clara fired again. Renner clipped her sleeve, flesh burning. Taza's knife found soft gap beneath the pauldron, drove deep. Renner's snarl curdled to gurgle. Blood glossed gold breaks ruby. He sank eyes wide. Map, curse you both, cave will bury. Breath fled. Taza knelt, white blade on Renner's velvet sash. Clara checked her arm, graze only. Fuse carts rigged, he said. His men roll out at dawn. Explosion'll seal treasure, swallow bodies. He looked at her, question unspoken. She gazed at the ingots, at Renner's corpse, at the candles guttering in tar-black sockets. Bury greed, she whispered. But not hope. She hefted one brick, slipped it into her saddlebag. He matched her with a second. Equal weight for widow and warrior. They dragged Renner's body to the secret exit, narrow crevice opening onto a ledge over the switchbacks. Below, torches still flickered, mule teams brayed. Clara unspooled the dead man wire's slack until it trembled in her fist. Dawn's first ember touched the sky. Taza placed her hand on the wire. When wheels turn, powder wakes. You sure? Certain. She thought of Samuel's blood, of Hodge chained to sunlight, of every saint watching. Greed dug this grave. Let greed fill it. They slipped into pre-dawn gloom, leaving canvas peeled back, gold gleaming like false sunrise around a cooling corpse. Outside, desert air tasted of sage and endings. Behind them the mind whispered, waiting for the final ride that would pull thunder from the earth. Black stillness held the ironwood wastes like a drawn breath, then dawn cracked wide, and the canyon answered with thunder. Powder carts rumbled below the ledge, wheels tugging the hidden wire until sparks bit fuse. First came a hiss, sharp as a rattler's strike, then a roar that shoved air sideways. Rock faces flared white, wagons vaulted in splinters, and a blossom of fire punched the night clean out of the sky. Shockwaves hurled men, mules, and conquistador breastplates in separate directions. Clara felt the ledge buck. She pressed flat, grit stinging her cheek, while flakes of quartz rained like broken stars. Taza crouched beside her, hat brim glowing ember red. He counted heartbeats until the echo faded to groans and ringing ears. Smoke coiled upward, tinted sunrise gold. Below, the main shaft mouth sagged inward, its timber teeth snapped. Renner's army of fortune lay scattered, half buried in scree, the rest running blind through choking dust. No leader, no plan, only terror. He touched Clara's shoulder. Time to disappear. They slid down a goat trail cut into the backside of the pillar, boots skidding. Powder haze covered them like a veil, disguising shapes and tracks. Reaching the canyon floor, they found Renner's Mustang still tethered, wide eyes white with fear. Clara stroked its neck, gentled its snorts. One good horse doubled their escape odds. They'd cleared 2 switchbacks when rifle cracks crackled off the walls, lawman cadence, precise. Sheriff Hodge, jaw strapped with bloody rag, one hand bandaged, badge dangling by a scorched thread, rode up the east ridgeline flanked by 6 fresh deputies. He must have bribed a posse at Dry Needle Crossing and followed the blast like a wolf sniffing smoke. Hodge reined in, blue bandana masking ash-blackened teeth. Step away from the horse, widow, he called, voice raspy but loud. The governor's reward just doubled, dead or alive after that fireworks stunt. Clara dragged the mare behind a boulder, bullets whining overhead. Taza snapped his Henry to shoulder, fired once. Lead pinged off Hodge's tin star, denting it inward against ribs. The sheriff howled, dropped behind saddle horn. Deputies fanned into firing line, cycling Winchesters. No cover but shattered wagons and powder-scoured stones. Taza grabbed Clara's elbow, yanked her toward an overturned cart half-packed with intact kegs. Second blast? She nodded, tugged the unused dynamite bundle from her satchel. He ripped a fuse from Renner's wreckage, teeth stripping cloth. Clara struck a match on a hat rim, lit wild fuse, shoved the bundle under the cart's iron rim. Taza heaved. The cart keeled upright, wheels locked, and they rolled it downhill straight at the posse. Deputies gaped as a blazing wagon limped their way like some hobbled demon. They scattered right when they should have fled left. The keg stack caught flame, turned white, then thunder clapped again, closer, fierce. Shrapnel shrieked. Horses reared, tossing riders. Hodges' mount crashed sideways. The sheriff rolled, pistol skittering out of reach. He crawled for it, but a splinter buried in his forearm froze him mid-grab. Clara and Taza sprinted across the smoke-filled no-man's land, leaping chunks of burning wood. Hodge gasped curses, tried to raise his gun hand. Taza's boot pinned the wrist. Clara knelt, snatched the badge still dented from earlier, and held it before his eyes. "Your tin star's worth more bent than straight," she said. "Like its owner." Hodge coughed ash. "You'll hang, widow. Governor'll send rangers." She pressed badge to his lips. "Send undertakers first." Then she rose, flung the star into the smoldering wagon. Taza dragged her away before the sheriff could spit another promise. They vaulted Renner's Mustang and Clara's roan, reins snapping. Hooves drummed over fresh rubble, while the canyon behind belched smoke and broken dreams. Miles later the wastes narrowed to a dry arroyo lined with saguaro skeletons. Both riders dismounted in the shade of an overhanging shelf. Horses lathered, lungs burned. Clara's sleeve stuck to the graze on her arm, but pain felt secondary beside the rush still buzzing her veins. Taza unpacked a canteen, poured a palmful for the Mustang, then drank. "Hodge survives. He'll chase again. He'll limp," she replied, wiping soot from her mouth. "And he'll need troops. That buys us hours." She unstrapped the single gold ingot from her saddlebag, its edges scuffed by their flight. Taza produced his matching bar. Together they weighed maybe 180 pounds, burden heavy enough to slow a lifetime. She rested her ingot on a flat stone between them. "Still want your cut?" He studied the gleam, then the horizon. "Gold feeds children. But blood coins curse them." She pushed the bar closer. "Your clan deserves land, water, tools, solid things, not curses." A thin smile, first she'd seen, creased his weathered face. He broke the ingot in two with a miner's hammer salvaged from the mine, striking the seam Renner had stamped. Metal screamed, split. Dust motes twirled in the sunlight shaft. He offered her half. She snapped the remaining ingot across the same fracture, until they held 4 rough bricks, equal. "To each," he said. "Enough to change lives, not buy kingdoms." Footsteps skittered on high rock. Both guns snapped up, yet only a lizard froze, throat pulsing. They exhaled. Clara tucked her shares deep into her saddlebags. "We need fresh water and a safe trail north. I know a wagon route through Devil's Ribbon that cuts days." Taza cinched his saddle, scanning the skyline. Distant plume of dust marked riders regrouping behind them, black flecks against morning glare. He swung onto the Mustang. "Lead on, noisy ghost." She mounted, grinning despite bruises. "You still can't navigate Worth's Spit." He shrugged. "I follow thunder trails." They urged their horses into the arroyo's serpentine gut. Sun climbed, painting the ironwood thorns like daggers of light. Behind, Skull Gate's pillars leaned under a fresh collar of soot, silent testimony that greed had a belly but no bottom. Ahead stretched leagues of unforgiving desert. But the widow who once hung from a dead tree now rode free, pockets heavy, heart heavier only with possibilities. The Navajo warrior rode beside, debt balanced, purpose renewed. Together they vanished into shimmering heat, 2 silhouettes stitched to the dust until even the vulture circling far above lost sight of where vengeance ended and something kinder, unnamed, began. Lightning stabbed horizon to horizon though the sky wore nothing but bruised blue, a desert mirage of anger heralding trouble faster than any posse. Clara reined her roan at the crest of Devil's Ribbon, a knife-thin trail winding between 2 sheer drop-offs, and tasted static on the air. Wind screamed up the chasm like a preacher warning sinners their pews were on fire. Taza's Mustang danced, sensing more than thunder. Down below, dust plumes crawled, riders forcing their mounts through the canyon floor, desperate to cut them off at the narrows. Sheriff's fools took the long route, Clara muttered, scanning switchbacks beneath. They'll choke us at the choke point. Taza swung down and pressed his ear to the sandstone. Hoofbeats thudded through stone bone. Less than a mile. Led by a man who can't shoot straight but knows how to grind numbers. Clara's eyes flicked to the satchel where her half-bricks clinked softly. Gold's an anchor. Anchors sink ships. We drop the weight, outrun them. And let Hodge fund another gallows? Taza loosened his Henry's sling, gaze flinty. Better anchors than nooses. Far off, a rifle cracked, testing range. Bullet hissed overhead, clipped a tuft of sage, sent seeds spiraling across nothingness. Taza gestured to a boulder perched like a toppled tombstone. Ambush buys time. Clara dismounted, palms already slick. Memories of ropes biting flesh fluttered back, but she pinned them beneath purpose. Together they pried at the rock, muscles screaming. Another shot whined, ricocheted, showering grit. The boulder grudgingly tipped, teetered, then thundered down the slope, shattering into fragments the size of coffins across the narrow floor. Horses below shrieked as riders yanked reins. A deputy flew headfirst into Talus, helmet ringing like church bells. Confusion blossomed. Hodge's voice roared orders, half swallowed by echo. Clara seized the moment. There's a goat path above the ribbon, steep, loose, but it skirts the blockade. We take it or die here. Taza peered up the almost vertical scramble rimmed with needle cactus. Hoofed animals won't make that. We climb alone, she said, swinging satchel across her shoulders. Your clan's children can lift gold their fathers died for. I'll drag my share when lungs stop bleeding. He studied her set jaw, then tied reins together, slapped the horses toward open ground. May those spirits guide them. They started the ascent, fingers clawing for holds in crumbly rock. Gravel avalanched with every move, stinging their faces. Behind, Hodge's posse regrouped, rifles snapping. Lead struck cliff where they'd stood seconds before. Clara felt rock jerk under her boot. Toe hold vanished. She lurched, but Taza's grip on her belt hauled her upright. Keep climbing. Death waits beneath, not above. Wind keened around them, hot as forged breath. At last they crawled onto a ledge no wider than a church pew. Above it, an abandoned telegraph line stretched along the ridge, single rusty cable twanging in the wind like a gut string. 5 yards ahead the cable's ceramic insulator had shattered. The line dipped across empty air before knotting around a post jutting from the far cliff face. Clara's laugh came breathless and wicked. Knew Western Union would kill me one day. Taza appraised distance, cables sag, their dwindling options. Weighted right, it will hold once. He unfastened his half-ingot sling, tied it to the wire, testing flex. Slide across, pull slack for me. You first. He shook his head. Hodge wants you. His bullets will follow weight on the line. Better they chase me. No time for argument. Rifles cracked again, chips stinging her ear. Taza gripped cable, kicked off. The wire moaned but held, sagging under his weight as he zipped over the gulf. Midway, a deputy's bullet clipped the cable, whining sparks. Taza jerked, legs flailing, but momentum carried him to the other post where he slammed hard, wrapped arms, gasping. He waved, go. Clara looped her sling and swallowed fear. The void below sucked at courage like quicksand at boots. She pushed off. Cable sang, wind drenched her eyes. Halfway the weakened span snapped with a metallic shriek. Terror punched her gut. She plunged, still clamped to wire suddenly free on one end. Taza leapt, arm out like a spear. Fingers met wrist, white-hot pain. He hauled. Her boots scuffed stone, dangled over emptiness for a breathless eternity. Then she sprawled atop him on solid ledge. Below, posse cheers turned curses as they saw the broken wire flapping uselessly. Hodge's face twisted, red as a branding iron, but he couldn't risk horses on the goat path nor bullets at that range. Clara rolled off Taza, lungs flaming. That was idiotic. Worked. he rasped, massaging rope-burned palms. They staggered inland, away from the rim. Sage gave way to juniper, and the air cooled, touched by unseen springs. Noon bent overhead when they stumbled upon a dry stone ruin, an outpost once manned by cavalry scouts, now only low walls and a cracked cistern. Water shimmered 4 feet below. They lowered Taza's hat on a rope, hauled up liquid silver, drank until bellies protested. Clara eyed their shared bounty. 2 half-ingots each, gleam dulled by dust and sweat. Hodge will track until that badge of his lies flat. Taza rested against the wall, gazed north where purple mountains climbed. My clan's village sits beyond those peaks. Sacred ground the government forgets exists. We bury gold there. Sheriff crosses that border, even governors think twice. What about me? Clara asked, voice quieter than wind through stone. He answered without pause. You ride with me, ghost the trail, heal, decide tomorrow. Widow's past is ash, future still breathes. She looked at calloused hands, at wrists once bound. Ghosts need a name. Clara Redhawk? He teased. She rolled her eyes, a spark of laughter in spite of cracked lips. Far off, an echo of hooves signaled pursuit, skirting back to safer passes. Time shrank. They saddled again, borrowed canteens full, spirits paired to sharp edges. Ridge sun cast their merged shadows long across the ruin. Together they resembled a single figure wielding 2 hearts, 1 blade. They rode north, leaving Devil's Ribbon bleeding shale behind. Ahead, clouds gathered over the sacred peaks, promising rain, or judgment, or both. Each carried gold enough to shift fates, yet light enough not to drag souls down. And somewhere in the dust winding far below, an enraged sheriff nursed a dented star, unaware that every step he took merely lengthened the legend of the widow and the warrior who refused to die. Storm clouds split the desert sky like black drumheads, thunder ricocheting off the red spine of the sacred peaks. The first raindrops in months struck the ground like molten lead, pocking the dust as Clara and Taza urged their blown horses up the final switchback of Spirit Pass. Lightning threw white spears across the escarpment, illuminating stone monoliths carved by wind into crouching wolves. Below, a ragged knot of riders crested the lower ridge, Sheriff Hodge, mud-spattered star glinting, leading the last 6 men reckless enough to follow him into forbidden Navajo land. Clara tasted rain laced with blood iron and pulled her Colt. The cylinder clicked dry. Only 1 bullet slept in her belt. Taza checked his Henry, 2 rounds. They exchanged a glance, acceptance, not fear, then kicked forward onto the plateau where blue grama swayed knee-high, silvered by downpour. In the center stood a lone cedar bent eastward by decades of wind. Taza slid from the saddle, stabbed his knife into the wet earth, and hung his half-ingot on the hilt like a vow. Clara mirrored the gesture, gold brick flashing in the lightning strobe, and felt the weight leave her spine. Hooves clattered behind. Hodge hauled his mount to a skidding stop, pistol leveled, rain washing ash from his bandages. End of the trail, widow. Hand over the Spanish blood money, and you might keep breathing till dawn. Clara's laugh rang sharp as broken glass. Money's buried, Sheriff. All that's left to collect is your due. Taza stepped forward, rain beating his braids into dark ropes. You cross sacred ground, badgeman. Turn back and the storm swallows your tracks. Hodge spat mud. Sacred means nothing when the governor wants heads. He cocked the revolver. The plateau exploded with motion. Taza rolled left, Henry booming. A deputy spun off his horse, tethered to death by reins. Clara dove right, single bullet hissing into the throat of a rider raising a Spencer. 2 left barrels barked. Lead plowed furrows in the sod within fingerbreadths of Taza's ribs. He swung the rifle like a staff, smashing the nearest horse's face. The animal reared, flinging its master onto a jagged basalt outcrop. The last deputy froze, weapon trembling. Hodge backhanded him aside, snarling, and advanced alone. Drop that popgun, Whitlock. I want you alive for the noose. His boots squelched closer, star gleaming like a cursed coin. Clara knelt by the cedar, rain plastering hair across her cheeks. She retrieved the gold brick, hefting its cold weight, then flung it end over end. The ingot caught Hodge on the brow with a dull clang. He stumbled, pistol firing wide into the night. Before he could refocus, Taza's final shot slammed into the dented star, driving it deep into flesh and bone. The sheriff's knees buckled. He dropped, hands pawing air that wasn't there, eyes wide with the shock of a man who thought legends couldn't bleed him. Thunder answered, rolling long and low, as though the mountain itself passed judgment. Hodge's body collapsed face first into runoff, badge half embedded in his heart. Silence settled, broken only by hiss of rain on cooling barrels. Clara exhaled, Colt finally empty. Taza collected the sheriff's revolver, opened the cylinder, every chamber still full, and placed it on the cedar's roots beside the twin gold bricks. "Payment for the spirits," he murmured. Gray light seeped through thinning clouds. The surviving deputy limped backward, eyes huge, horse long gone. Taza nodded spare mercy. The man turned and fled toward the pass without needing a second chance. Clara wiped water from her eyes, stared at the ingots gleaming beneath the cedar. "Your clan can still use that." Taza set a hand on the trunk, fingers reverent. "Gold will lure new Hodge. Better it sleeps where ancestors guard it." She understood. Some treasures belong in earth, not pockets. Together they heaved sodden soil, dug a shallow grave beneath the cedar, lowered bricks and revolver, then replaced stones until no shine remained. Rain tamped the mound flat, erasing the greed that built it. Horses waited, steam curling off flanks. Dawn cracked the horizon peach gold, casting long shadows across the plateau. Taza's gaze traced the weaving smoky column of the fleeing deputy, one thread of violence finally fraying into distance. "Trails clear to my people's camp by nightfall," he said softly. "He will not return with men before then." Clara rested her palm on the cedar, felled roots grip deep. "Your clan first. After, there's an old farmhouse near Bisbee with a roof that leaks and land that doesn't. It could use a pair of stubborn hands." Rain eased to drizzle. Taza swung into the saddle, extended an arm. She clasped his wrist, vaulted up behind him, water spraying from her skirts. The Mustang turned north, hooves muffled by wet grass. As they rode, the plateau stretched wide, thick with wild flowers awakened by the storm. Somewhere underfoot gold dreamed in darkness beside a tarnished star, guarded by cedar and thunder. A solitary vulture angled overhead then drifted south, its vigil finished. Clara laid her head against Taza's back, listening to his heartbeat match the mare's steady rhythm. The raw whistle of a far-off train drifted across the plain, a promise that the world kept rolling forward, indifferent and wide as the sky. She smiled into the wind. Whatever tomorrow named them, widow, warrior, ghosts, or something newborn, they would ride toward it together, unburdened by chains of silver or debts of blood, carrying only the echo of rain and the memory of freedom earned at gunfire's edge.